Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of AEW Dynamite back on Wednesdays. Before we get into it though, I just do want to say I am still feeling a bit downhearted after the news that broke earlier today from Ring of Honor, how they're going to go on a hiatus after Final Battle in December, no shows for the first quarter of 22, and assumedly Supercard of Honor still happening in April, but besides that, the future of ROH is very much in the air with all these contracts being allowed to expire at the end of the year for all the contracted wrestlers. A lot more questions than answers right now. Things very much up in the air in terms of ROH's future. Go watch my live stream that I did earlier on Wednesday about it to hear more of my thoughts. I'm sure I'll have more to say about it tomorrow when Jay Biggs and I record the podcast. But I do want to say thanks to those who sent me well wishes in the aftermath about this. I'll be fine, and I'm sure a lot of the other talented people in ROH will be able to land on their feet fairly soon. But we're not here to talk about ROH right now. We're here to talk about a show that definitely wouldn't exist right now without ROH's influence, and that's AEW Dynamite. Let's begin. The show begins with CM Punk's in-ring debut for Dynamite as he takes on Bobby Fish. I love JR's calls. The show begins. Two birthday boys are going to battle here. Which one gets the ice cream? This is a great match. Starts out with the two trading big kicks and strikes, and JR and Tony Schiavone are talking, having a nice chat about tope suicidas as Fish takes over and attacks Punk's leg. I love how Tony refers to Punk as CM on commentary, as if CM is his actual first name. I also loved Fish's counter of the GTS into a dragon screw near the end here. He really has Punk on the ropes for a lot of this match. We get some more countering, and then finally Punk hits the go to sleep to win the match here. Kind of interesting note here at the end of the match, because Punk hits the move, sells for a second, and when he makes the cover, Fish kicks out at 3.1, which has not happened so far on AEW when Punk's won with that move. So I don't know if that was Fish going into business for himself, or maybe he thought that, well, Punk did take a little extra time to get over the cover, so you have to kind of like look strong, but that just seemed kind of weird. I don't know if it was enough to justify a 3.1 kick out for Fish, but besides that, a very strong way to open the show. Not CM Punk's greatest match since coming back to AEW, but I think it was very engaging nonetheless. Malachi Black cuts a promo on Cody Rhodes, who beat him on Saturday's Dynamite, where he says, "I've turned the crowd against you, I've split the Nightmare family, I've divided them, I've made you question everything. It's never been about wins and losses, and the house always wins." A nice promo for Malachi to save face in this one. Not that he looked bad necessarily in his match with Cody. Again, there's people who think that he got buried because Cody won the third encounter, but I mean, Black won pretty decisively in the first two, so Malachi technically wins this feud. Anyway, moving on to MJF making a rare in-ring appearance here, taking on Bryce Donovan. MJF is accompanied by Wardlow and Wardlow's new accountability buddy, Shawn Spears. I really want to see more of how that particular storyline develops after we saw that on Saturday. MJF squashing Donovan in seconds flat, hits the Heat Seeker, pins with one finger on the chest to win, and Excalibur saying that MJF has fulfilled his quarterly wrestling quota for his quarterly wrestling obligation. MJF on the microphone afterward calling Boston a shithole, saying that all the women here are ugly, but then the next sentence he's like, "Oh, I've fucked all your moms." Well, pick one. Either you don't want to have sex with them or you do. He gloats about how Darby Allin hasn't been seen since the Pinnacle beatdown a few weeks ago, and they beat up Sting to boot the previous show. He calls himself a future world champion. The lights cut out and Sting's music plays, but it's a prank, a hilarious goof by MJF here, and then the lights cut off again. We get a video on the screen of somebody wearing a crude MJF outfit. He shows up on stage at some concert, and then Darby Allin just does a running dropkick on that guy, and then the screen says, "Now it's time for me to break you physically." Lights come back up. It's Sting. He's got his baseball bat and he's swinging like crazy. MJF escapes, and then behind him in the ring, in the crowd area, is Inspector Gadget Darby Allin. He's wearing like one of those flasher jackets for sure. If he had like a hat on, he'd be a dead ringer for Inspector Gadget. So he gets in the ring and he jumps MJF and he attacks Wardlow with the thumbtack skateboard. MJF escapes while Wardlow and Spears take their beating. And then Allin, in very few words, challenges MJF to a match at Full Gear. So that's how we get to that point. I thought it was a good segment for MJF to get a lot of heat, not only having that very short match, but then of course tearing down the Boston fans, setting up for Darby's return, and then gets that's what is the jumping off point to get to their grudge match at Full Gear. So it's pretty well done. Tony Schiavone backstage with Dr. Britt Baker and her crew, and Tony says that Tony Khan has made this match official for Friday's Rampage, that Britt will take on Abaddon in a trick or retreat match. It's no DQ, and if Abaddon wins, she gets a title match down the road. And Britt says she got some tricks of her own heading to that match at Rampage. On we go to the TNT Championship match as Sammy Guevara defends against Ethan Page of Men of the Year. And if Sammy loses, he must leave the Inner Circle. But if he wins, then the Inner Circle gets to choose which members of American Top Team are going to be in the 5-on-5, I should say, tag team match at Full Gear. A lot of fighting before the bell officially rings, and once it begins, there's some good back and forth. I love Page's cutoff where he does the backbreaker. He just drops Sammy spine first onto the top turnbuckle before the break, throwing him around hither and yon. I love Sammy's, his big cutter after 2 straight springboards, bounce, cutter. His shooting star to the outside's always fun and crazy to watch. Page hits the iconoclasm, that nice straight jacket slam off the top that he does. Sammy wins with a roll-up kind of out of nowhere. Ethan Page jumping Sammy after the match, Scorpio Sky joining in. Then the Inner Circle show up with a pyro. I've never seen a rescue done with pyro accompaniment before, but of course it's the Inner Circle, it's Chris Jericho, so he's got to get the pyro. The fans sing along and everything. Jericho sang on the microphone afterward. He says that the last person Ethan Page beat was himself in the hotel room, kind of keeping the spirit of 2000 alive with these promos as Jericho been doing lately. It does get a beat the meat chance, so the fans are definitely game for it. He declares that their match at Full Gear, will be a 5-on-5 tag team match. It'll be a Minnesota street fight, and then next week we find out the opponents that the Inner Circle will choose. And he closes out the promo by quoting Aerosmith, who are from Boston. It's a nice match and a post-match promo, but my whole thing was was there any doubt that Guevara was going to win this thing? Did anyone really think he was going to leave the Inner Circle? Also, I feel they're using that as a stipulation way too much this year, where it's if so-and-so loses, the Inner Circle must disband, or this person must leave the Inner Circle. It's the Inner Circle's barely done anything this year for the most part. I feel they've been apart more than they've been together, which is why they make a big deal out of them reuniting in the last couple of weeks. So I don't know. It just seems like the whole threatening to leave or to cancel the Inner Circle just seems like it's almost played out at this point. Shivani's backstage interviewing Bryan Danielson and Eddie Kingston ahead of their World Title Eliminator Tournament match happening on Friday. Kingston responds to what Bryan told him the night before, how he doesn't work hard enough. He responds by saying, "I take Zoloft every morning so I don't rage out on people. I suffer from depression. The depression turns to anger. You don't know what my life's about." He leaves after saying his piece, and Danielson goes, "That's the Eddie Kingston that I want to see. The guy who's depressed and angry," basically. But he says that he will beat him in their match on Friday. We get a promo right afterward where Shivani's interviewing the Lucha Brothers, and they challenge FTR to a match for their AEW tag titles at Full Gear. And later on in the night, we find out that FTR accepts. Again, was there any doubt? TBS Championship Tournament first round action up next as Hikaru Shida takes on Serena Deeb. It's a rematch from a couple of weeks ago when Deeb deprived Shida of her 50th AEW win. I loved this match. Probably one of the best straight wrestling matches of the night. These two absolutely delivered it. Very hard-hitting affair with these two. I love the story told here. There's a great figure 4 on the ring post on Shida from Deeb, which is very appropriate because Deeb is wearing the Bret Hart colors in this matchup here. Deeb with a flurry of submissions, Shida remaining resilient. Deeb wants to hit Hikaru with that broken 50 wins plaque, but it backfires. Deeb almost wins dirty, but Shida kicks out of the roll-up. Shida ends up prevailing. She folds up Deeb to win the match, get the 50th win, and she advances in the tournament. Very good match here. Deeb with the cheap shot after the bell, clobbering Shida's legs, and putting her in a couple submissions before the officials break it up. It feels like this would have been a more powerful moment had we not just seen a post-match beatdown after the heel lost, which we already saw in that TNT title match. But still, not taking anything away from the match itself because the match was awesome. We find out that the scheduled Lio Rush, Dante Martin versus the Sydal brothers match has been nixed because Mike is injured, so we're getting Dante versus Matt Sydal again, which is going to be a great match, but it's the third time we've seen it now since they've been in the company. Lio puts himself over and says that Dante is going to beat Matt because Lio will be in his corner. Then it's time for the final first round match in the World Title Eliminator Tournament as Jon Moxley takes on 10 of the Dark Order, and Moxley just beats the piss out of this poor kid. He rips his mask open, he bites his face, leaves him a bloody mess before hitting the paradigm shift, the 1, 2, 3, then immediately leaves for the crowd again as if he had somewhere to be. see. There's people who are speculating that Jon Moxley might be turning heel soon. It feels like between this and like the fact he's wrestling Orange Cassidy next week, and he might leave him in the same state afterward, and, you know, based on how the tournament's being projected, the person he's probably going to face in the finals seems like it's tailor-made for a chance to turn heel. We'll have to wait and see, though. It's time for a Cody Rhodes promo. He's riding high after his big win against Malachi Black on Saturday. He's met with a standing boovation. He talks about how in his match on Saturday, he could have used the pedigree on Black and done a big sneer and turned heel, essentially, but he said he didn't do that because it would be too easy. He has a line here where he says, nobody has a problem cheering the guy who signs the checks, but don't forget about the guy who built the bank. And he talks about telling people to walk a mile in his shoes. He says he will not turn. He used that specific verbiage. He will not turn. He says he won't do that because he loves the fans too much, which the fans shit all over. It's funny because Cody says you can cheer who you want, boo who you want, but don't boo like the incorrect narrative, basically is what he says here. He apologizes to everyone he has wronged since, you know, going Hollywood and taking his eye off the ball, shakes Arn Anderson's hand. Then Andrade El Idolo shows up and interrupts and says, hey, you know what? The fans don't like you. They don't like me either, but the difference is I don't care about the people. He also says that Cody's neck tattoo is stupid. He says he wants to make Cody his little bitch. The lights cut off. Malachi Black appears, and so he missed Cody. The two of them beat down Cody and Arn. Pac makes the save. That's Andrade's recent rivals. He makes a save, evens the odds, and protects Cody a little bit as Andrade and Black are chased off. So seems to me we're building toward a tag match with these four sooner than later. It feels like a full gear match to me, but we'll have to see. I like they're making an alliance out of Andrade and Black here. Like, they've got a history. Anyone who knows one or both of those guys knows they do, and they have a special connection in a number of ways as well. So to have that connection there and not really talking, you know, it's like the history is implied, but not explicitly said. And so I like that they're doing that with this pairing here. And as far as like Cody's promo, it was interesting. Again, the very specific verbiage of him saying he will not turn, I thought that was very on the nose. So it feels like, is it a red herring? Or is this going to, you know, go the Cena route where it's like he is flat out said, like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this because you boo me and you want to push me in that direction. At least, you know, they're not ignoring it, but they're not addressing the problem. I mean, they're addressing the problem. But I've always said addressing the problem isn't the same as fixing the problem. Main event time, it's an 8-man tag as the Dark Order take on the Super Elite. And of course, this being the show before Halloween, we got the costumes, folks. The Dark Order are out in full force. You've got John Silver dressed as Bambi. You've got Stu Grayson as the second wrestler this week to sport the Kratos God of War attire. You've got some cowboys. You've got Colt Cabana as Brandon Cutler. Got a pantomime horse. Who's that at the door? And the Elite are dressed as Ghostbusters, complete with their own kind of Jimmy Hart-ified Ghostbusters theme. You've got Michael Nakazawa in an inflatable Bebe suit, and there's a Stay-Puft Marshmallow Man with them as well in a big inflatable suit as well. This match is amazing, and the bell has not even rung yet. I love, like, this is a classic Chikara-style matchup where there's, like, goofy shit in there, but also a lot of great athleticism. I love that Evil Uno insists on keeping his cowboy hat on for as much of the match as possible. Even as he's taking a beat down, he's like still fumbling for the hat to keep putting it on as he's selling. Stu Grayson takes a lot of the heat here, but he looks great as he fights out from the Elite's attacks to get that hot tag to Colt Cabana, who's a House of Fire. John Silver gets a great run as well. The referee gets knocked down, and the Elite get all cheating now. They knock all the opponents down with low blows. They get the proton packs out, and as JR is like, protein packs, bags of milk, what are we talking about here? JR is just getting very exasperated. They use the packs as weapons. They powerbomb Colt Cabana onto all of them, and like the Stay-Puft guys in the ring with them now. One half of the pantomime horse shows up, who was with the Dark Order earlier, as you might recall, but then the Super Elite beat that guy down, the BTE trigger, and they unmask him, and it's Brandon Cutler, whose mouth was taped shut. So who's in the Stay-Puft suit? If it's not Cutler, there's the big unmasking, and it's Hangman Page, which gets a tremendous pop, and the shot they have is absolutely perfect. So Page doing some Stay-Puft shit to help the Dark Order win this thing. You've got Silver pinning Matt Jackson to win the match with the Dark Order. So the Super Elite eating some crow here on this night. Page getting a big win or a moral victory against Omega and the Elite. Like I said, the match style is polarizing. You're either going to enjoy that kind of entertaining style or kind of the silly style in the matchup, or you're not. If you don't, then that's fine. fine, but for me personally, I really enjoyed it. The match was great, told a good story, and again, Hangman Page coming at the end to get that bit of revenge on Omega is just really well done. I mean, this is one of the best things about AEW right now is the build for that title match, and I just love the way they incorporated it here. My grade for this week's Dynamite is a B+. Lots of great wrestling to kind of keep this show running at a good pace. Punk versus Fish was a good match. Guevara versus Page was great as well. Shida versus Deeb, the best just pure wrestling match of the night. And then, of course, the 8-man tag in the main event was another pick for top match, but for very different reasons. Not a lot to complain about with this show, in my opinion. Like the Cody Rhodes promo, interesting where they're going with this or how they're addressing the situation of Cody being booed despite being booked as a babyface. But what did you think of Dynamite this week, folks? Let me know in the comment section below. Like I said yesterday in my NXT review, there may or may not be reviews for NXT and Dynamite next week because I will be out of town. Yes, ROH is still in operation as of this recording, and we have a TV taping next week, so I am part of that. The tickets have been bought. I'm going to fly on the plane. They can't stop me. So that's going to happen. I may or may not review the shows next week. If I can't, I sincerely apologize, but I will keep you posted on that. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.